Should you move to Japan? Well, depending on the reasons, maybe not. So I've been living in Japan for about 8 years in total, and I actually kind of went on and off. I was in Japan for about 5 years, and then I moved back to the US because, to be honest, I was super miserable in Japan. But then I decided to come back to Japan, and now I'm a lot happier. And so first of all, I'm going to go through the reasons why you should not to move to Japan for these reasons, because I want you to avoid to be miserable just like I was back then. And part of the reason why I was that miserable in Japan in the first place was first, work ethic. In Japan, they have very, very hardcore work ethics compared to most of the other countries, including my home country and the US. I just remembered after I got out of my master's degree in college, I decided to work in a traditional Japanese company in Japan. And the one thing about working culture in these traditional Japanese companies is there's a lot of coworkers who work very, very long hours. I remember there was this one time where I saw all of my other coworkers working until 9 or 10. And, at first I went home early. I went home around 5 or 6, the usual standard time. But then you start feeling this peer pressure, because you want to integrate into this company. And so I felt like it was an obligation for me to do overwork as well. I remember there's some days where I would work until 11 or 12 a.m. I even remember missing my last train home. But those 3 years of working, I felt like it started taking a toll on my health. And at some point, I kind of just broke. So I decided to quit my job, went back to the US, and to recuperate. So that's reason number one, is the work ethics in Japan are very hardcore. And so you have to be prepared for that. Or what you can do, which I did, and the reason why I came back to Japan is because I started working at a foreign company. But in the end, I came back to Japan because I really enjoyed life here. I didn't like the work life, but I really enjoyed life here. And so what you could do, which is the reason why I came back to Japan, is I found a foreign company to work at, and everybody was a little bit more relaxed. Of course, we'd still work hard, but not as hard as I used to. And I felt like I got my life back. So if you do want to live in Japan, I would recommend going for a foreign company with not as hardcore of a work lifestyle. I wouldn't work at a Japanese company that is very traditional because, you can get burnt out pretty fast. Like I did. I mean, I was actually quite surprised that I could even work for 3 years in total at my old company. So one of the other reasons why you wouldn't want to move to Japan is if you're most likely to feel lonely easily. And I say this because it's really true for any country that you go to, whether it's Japan, China, Korea, Germany, wherever you go. If it's a foreign country, you'll most likely feel a bit more lonely compared to your home country because you're away from your friends and your family. But Japan can be particularly lonely, especially because the culture is quite different compared to other countries. And I say this because if you don't know the language, it can be very difficult to live here. For example, this is at least true in Tokyo, but for example, if you go to a convenience store, if you go to a supermarket, they're going to talk to you in Japanese, not English. So you need to learn the language. So if you have trouble learning languages or it's not your strong suit, it can get lonely because there are not very many people who can speak English except maybe some other foreigners or some other people who are Japanese, but they've been abroad or let's say they've been studying lots of English. And so I recommend that you learn the language before deciding to move here. Another thing is most people in Japan don't invite you to their houses like they do, for example, in the US. I remember when I was a kid growing up, and even now as an adult, when I have some good friends, we go to their house, have a potluck party, or hang out during Christmas together, either at their house or my house, etc. But in Japan, it's not quite so common because the houses here are a lot smaller. So rather than going out to their house, it's usually at some kind of izakaya, which is kind of like a bar, but with lots of good food. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. And I think after a couple of years in Japan, you'll start making your own friend group and you understand a little bit more about the culture and stuff. You'll feel less lonely. But I'd say, especially the first year, it took some time for me to adjust. But after that, it gets better. So reason number 2, don't move to Japan if you get lonely easily. So the last reason why you wouldn't want to move to Japan is because of money. If you think money is really important, I wouldn't recommend it because the Japanese yen has depreciated so much. I remember it used to be 80 to the dollar, and now it's 150, sometimes 160 to the dollar. It's been ridiculous. Now this used to be close to, I'd say maybe 12 bucks or so, but now this is like $7, $7.50, around there. It's gotten so cheap that, if you start working in Japan and then you went back to the US, all the money you saved up will be a lot less because it's depreciated so much in the past 2 to 3 years. Of course, you can also find a higher paying job, but I'm just saying that there might be a lot more high paying jobs in the US compared to Japan for the same career level or the same amount of experience. So yeah, money could be a factor. Of course, you could get lucky, and there are some companies out there that pay very well. Maybe even better than the US, but still, consider the fact that the Japanese yen has depreciated a lot. So, I hope that gave you some idea of what it's like to live in Japan and some thoughts on how to be prepared if you do decide to move to Japan. Now, again, should you move to Japan? Maybe, maybe not. But again, I would prepare for some of the hurdles living here. And also, I encourage you to challenge yourself if you want to live here. For me, I would say it was quite challenging the first 3 years of working. And maybe moving to Japan isn't for you, but you have to try first and decide for yourself. So I hope some of these tips helped you, and I don't discourage you to come here. I actually encourage you to come here if you can. Now, I lived in quite a few other countries in the past, but I think I really liked Japan the most. And so I would say, yeah, give Japan a try if you want.